bump up against one another. We first had to have our photographs taken tonight. That was tedious at best. But so here we go. The time is 6:45, and we have the presence of a quorum, and this meeting's been duly called, and notice of the meeting has been posted for the time and manner required by law. Our first item of business is an information item. And Dr. Dupree, would you like to introduce it, or would you like me to introduce it? It's mine. Okay. The Internal Audit Committee has a report, and we have with us Mr. Greg Gibson and Ms. Cheyenne Rolfe from Gibson Consulting to update us with an internal audit update. Mr. Gibson or Ms. Rolfe, whichever of you. Okay, please, sir, if you would make sure your green light is on your microphone, because our meeting is recorded for the public so they can stay up to date in case they can't be here tonight.
Thank you, members of the board. Dr. Dupree, it's our pleasure to be here tonight to give you an update on the internal audit program. And there's going to be just a few slides that we want to walk you through. First of all, I'm Greg Gibson. I'm the president of the firm, and I'm the director of this internal audit program and all of the projects. And sitting to my left is Cheyenne Rolfe, who is our project manager for each of the projects, as well as the manager for the program of the internal audit function for the school system. So if you go to the next slide, this year we conducted 4 audits, and one is still ongoing. Purchasing accounts payable, construction management, student information system follow-up. The original student information audit was conducted last year, and we did a follow-up this year. And a follow-up audit basically goes in and monitors the implementation of the recommendations. And then lastly is payroll, and that's in process as we speak. We presented information about the first 2 audit reports to the board previously. Tonight I'm going to give you an update on the student information system follow-up report. And so we came in and did some additional analysis, conducted interviews with additional staff, and made our own assessment of where the status of these recommendations stand. This page shows you that 3 are complete, 3 are substantially complete, 4 are partially complete, and then 2 are not complete, and 1 is initiated, but not much has happened on that. So overall, there has been progress. Some of the progress on these recommendations was dependent on other events, such as your bond election, and so I'll give you an update on the ones that are either not complete or partially complete. And then there's one that's initiated, but not much has happened on that yet, or not much progress has been made on that. So the next slide is a list of the recommendations, and on the left is a priority assignment and color code. So there's a recommendation number, and again, these are not all the recommendations. These are only the recommendations that are not really complete or substantially complete. And so the priority scheme on the left, the 1, 2, and 3 are the higher priorities, and so they are shaded in red. The middle are shaded in yellow, and the lower priority are shaded in green. And so of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 recommendations that still need work, 3 of those are high priority, 3 are moderate priority, and 1 is low priority. And so I'll just go through the recommendations in the order that they appear. Add redundant internet connectivity is still in process. I believe this was the one that was dependent on the bond issue being the bond election happening last year, and so that is in process. Consider replacing the ODB connection. This is also in process as well, but not complete. The W-coded absences, W-coded absences are temporary absences. A W-coded absence is an absence that shouldn't be a W for more than 5 days. And so particularly the elementary schools did not show as much progress as the secondary schools in reducing the number of temporary coded absences after day 5. Recommendation 8 is address attendance taking issues. The recommendation that related to the unrecorded attendance has improved at almost all schools. The issue related to late attendance reporting has not, we haven't seen the improvement there that we expected to see. And so that recommendation had several components to it, but again, significant progress on unrecorded attendance, but less progress on the late attendance taking. The disciplinary staff, recommendation 10, train school-based staff on disciplinary reporting. That is in progress, and at the time, again, this was several months ago, there was an information system that you purchased called Certify that's being used to identify data anomalies in your information systems, including your student information systems. That wasn't fully implemented when we were here early in the year. And so some of our assessment was based on that system not being fully implemented. It's my understanding that since we conducted our site work that system has been fully implemented, and so it is likely that recommendation is now complete. The coordination between the truancy office and the campus staff, there was a truancy system that's monitored on that's a separate database, and then we have our own student systems, and those two systems just didn't tie, and the school system figured out what was going on. I think they identified an over-reporting problem on the truancy system. However, when we were here doing the audit, there were still some fairly significant variances between those two systems. So there, at that time, there's still work to be done on that. And then the last recommendation 12, continue to reconcile the students classified as LEP, ESL, and bilingual in Skyward. We were not able to get all the documentation we needed to basically validate that recommendation had been fully implemented, so that recommendation is still in progress. So that's an update on that, on the student information system follow-up. I can pause there and see if we have any questions before we go to the next topic.
Do we have questions from the trustees regarding this portion? Mr. Rice.
Yes, thank you. I would just ask Dr. Dupree on the ones that are not complete or no significant progress made. Where is it? Do you have plans to complete those?
We absolutely do.
Okay.
Part of, as Greg mentioned, part of the issue has been waiting for the resources to become available.
From the bottom.
And others has simply been just the volume of work that's been undertaken by that department to address the findings. But this is a priority, and we've created the task map that's been provided to the board to show our anticipated timelines.
Is that this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we have other questions from the trustees? All right, Mr. Gibson.
The next slide discusses our cost proposal for next year's audits. And this, across the top, is the project area, estimated hours, estimated fees, estimated our out-of-pocket expenses, and then the total project cost for each project. And there were 3 new audits requested by the audit committee, facilities and operations. Now, if you recall, the construction management audit was done this past year, so this is operations and maintenance. This is custodial services, maintenance services, energy management. So I just want to differentiate. Some people like to link the construction and the operations and maintenance, but this is exclusively the facilities and operations function. Second is human resources. 3, safety and security. And this is a lot of, I think all of these were on the list for the risk assessment that we conducted when we started this program. So each of these were really in line for next to be audited during that risk assessment. There was other other projects that were considered, and based on the audit committee's input and the risk assessment, these were the ones that were finalized for next year. There were also several follow-up audits that were considered, are being considered for next year. One is the construction management, the other is the purchasing accounts payable, both of which were completed this year. So similar to what we did with the student information system audit, we're going back a year later to monitor the progress of the implementation. Now, the payroll audit is being conducted now, and so we wanted to give those recommendations a little bit more time since that audit will be completed this summer. We will likely propose that follow-up be done in the next fiscal year, not this coming fiscal year. So those are the total hours, estimated fees, expenses, and the expenses vary based on the degree of subcontractor use, and some of our subcontractors on these projects have to travel to come and work on the project. And so that's the major variance in the expense amounts. So again, if there are any questions about this proposal, I'd be more than happy to entertain them.
I have a question. Or, sorry, did you have a question? I'll ask a question first, and then other people can ask questions. The follow-up audits that you're suggesting there, and I know we've talked about this before, but is there a kind of a rule of thumb of time that you leave between when you do an audit and when you do a follow-up? I mean, we did the student information system, and then a year later, after obviously the start of school again and some of the other findings that we had, so we'd gone through a kind of a cycle before you did the follow-up. For these other things, what's kind of the rule of thumb for?
A year is generally when you would go back and look to see where things are. I think if you try to do it too quickly, then not enough things have started, or other variables are at play, and so I think 6 months is too quick. Now, if it's a really high priority and there's some really urgent recommendations, then you might do a follow-up of 1 or 2 specific recommendations to make sure that things are progressing quickly. Otherwise, I think a year is good. I think 2 years is too late, because most of our recommendations, we expect some kind of action on them, or an indication that they're not going to implement it, and if they're deciding not to implement it, then they need to justify to the board their basis for not doing that, and that happens on occasion. And so, but I think a year is a good, give or take 2 or 3 months, is a good benchmark for conducting a follow-up audit. And then I think based on the follow-up audit, you can decide we need another follow-up audit because not enough progress has been made. But those would be really isolated to specific things. So I think, a year from now, or next year, if the late attendance hasn't improved, but my guess is that we will see much more significant improvement in that in the coming year.
And that can be just a really focused look.
It can be looked at. We can look at one thing. If there's one thing on the list that so it doesn't have to be a follow-up of the entire set of recommendations. It's really what you want to do.
Right. Okay. It can be as specific as we would like. All right. Thank you.
I also failed to define what the program management at the bottom included. That includes Cheyenne's time both for the project management on these individual projects, as well as the overall program management that the audit committee has asked us to do. And this was requested by the audit committee several months ago, and we allocated some funds for the remainder of this year to fulfill the program management function that's the program level. And so this amount includes both the program and project management for the above projects, assuming that all of them are done.
All right, Mr. George.
Hi, Mr. Gibson. I'm talking about the student information system follow-up. You color-coded one item, 1, 2, 3, in the top priority. And 2 of them coded as partially complete. I mean, how far are we complete? I mean, do you...
audit report provides obviously many more details about the specific status of these. I think from the best person to answer that question, I mean, we gauged it. I think the district administration can give you a more current evaluation of where things stand today, because our assessment was based on work that we did 3 months ago. And so if you want to know, I mean, I can reference the report and tell you what we saw 3 months ago.
Sure.
But that's it's a little bit old news by now. And so I think it would be, if you're interested in more about where things stand today, I would think the administration would be able to address that question better than I.
Yeah, probably I might ask that question to you, Charles. Where do we, I mean, do we have an update? Where do we stand on that? Because it concerns me, just one item. We coded on a high alert, 1, 2, 3. And of course, there's a lot of discussions going on about it, and, where do we stand? And I know it is not a one-word or one-sentence issue or answer. That's not what I'm looking for. But in general, where do we stand?
Well, actually, on last Friday, and you actually have a hard copy in front of you right now, we've provided you the most current update. And now that is a management document that staff is using for me to hold them accountable for their task map, for their follow-up. But we're providing that to board just as an information item. And so that is, as of last week, the most current up-to-date that we could provide you. We're going to begin providing you quarterly updates on that same document. So I believe we're making adequate progress on all of them. And as we've discussed, clearly the red items are high priority items. Partially complete versus substantially complete is a judgment call that the auditors made based on their level of judgment. And so, we're not going to dispute any of that, but I think since in the 3 months that they have, since they delivered this report, we've continued our efforts, so I think we're making significant progress towards completing all of the items. And some of them do have timelines that go out even a year, just simply because it takes time to purchase equipment, properly install and implement equipment. So that's why we're going to continue to provide quarterly updates, so you should see all the items on the task map you've been provided begin to turn green and complete over the next year or so.
Yeah. And I wasn't expecting an answer. You're saying, oh, we did or we didn't. I know it is a process, and I completely understand. I was just trying to get an idea where we stand with that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And if I could, I'll just add, Mr. George, this, I know we just got these, but this corresponds to the student information audit. And so that one that's rated number 1, it's recommendation 8. And if you turn in the back, if you turn through here, you'll see recommendation 8. And the estimated completion date is September 16th of this year. So, and they've got some comments and things, and yeah.
All right, do we have more questions or anything from the trustees? All right. So the next part, we were going to introduce the task maps.
Well, I think Beth was going to speak to that. I've kind of addressed it, but Beth, do you have anything to add?
Did a nice job of addressing it. Yes, you received electronic copies on Friday, and you have a hard copy of the SIS follow-up audit, the design and construction, and the purchasing and accounts payable. And as Dr. Dupree referenced, you'll receive quarterly updates, and in the slide packet and on the slide here it shows those quarterly update dates that you'll be receiving the updated project task maps in all 3 of those areas moving forward. And the task map gives you, as Mr. Rice pointed out, a picture or a snapshot of the recommendations, the actions that administration is taking toward meeting the recommendation, the start time, end time, and then when you receive updates, you'll see the actual end time reflected in case it's different than the end time that was projected. And then, of course, we're capturing notes and progress as we move forward.
And so for the trustees' reference, the original audits are in their management oversight on the website, and they're available so that you can, if you want to know the backstory of a particular recommendation or how Gibson Consulting came up with that recommendation, that information is all there, so you can understand it. Is
That is correct.
accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, do we have any questions or any more comments about this item? All right, well, thank you, Mr. Gibson and Ms. Rolfe, for coming tonight. Our next item is the board is going to convene in closed session for the purpose of private consultation with the board's attorney, and for personnel matters, we are now convened in closed session.